Sorry, guys. I just went live and realized the camera's not where it's supposed to be right before I. Oh, so many moving parts after. Let's see if we get the audio right. There we go. Good morning, everybody. All right. So, first things first. Sorry. I am sorry. We missed it Saturday. Had a bit of a thunderstorm out here, and the power was out. I shit you not. For those of you who saw, I did a little live stream, a little fast one from my phone out in the driveway, just to say, hey guys, sorry, we're not going to have our usual Saturday deep dive tonight because the power's out. I was hoping the EMC would come in clutch at the last minute. Y'all, I shit you not. Like, as I hit the end button to shut down that live stream, minute and a half, whatever, hey, we're not going to make it. The power came back on, and it was almost exactly at 9 o'clock when we should have been starting the show that the power came back on. And of course, I've been at this since 5 o'clock this morning to get the show set up for this morning, to have everything ready and make sure everything goes live right. But guys, it is what it is. So let's start off with I'm going to summarize the news and just kind of tell you what's going on. So, because you don't need all that. It's just noise in the background. But just look at the sheer number of people out there. And understand what these guys are protesting. Okay, understand what these guys are protesting is deportation. Now, when we say deportation, what gets you deported? Well, illegal entry gets you deported. Illegal presence gets you deported. And we've discussed it many times in the past. What is, because, you'll hear the argument, oh, well, being an illegal in the country isn't a crime. It's a civil violation. That is only partially correct, right? Democrats love that whole technically correct is the best kind of correct. It is technically correct that unlawful presence is a civil violation and not a criminal one, right? But crossing the border illegally is a criminal violation. So let me put this in context a little bit. If you have someone who is here on an expired visa, something of that nature, the visa expires, they're still present, that is a civil violation, not a criminal one. If you crossed the border illegally and then are in the present tense, unlawfully present, your unlawful presence is a civil violation, but that doesn't change the fact that you've committed the crime. Arguing to the contrary is like arguing that a person who committed murder is not currently committing the crime, and therefore it is not a criminal violation. You're arguing that the person who is in the state of having committed the crime is not currently in the state of committing the crime, and therefore the crime is not at issue. That is false. That is incorrect. That is not how shit works. If you committed the crime, you are guilty of the crime. Now, under the American legal system and the tradition of English common law, we do indeed accept the idea that you are innocent until proven guilty. That is not a statement of fact. That is a statement of legal procedure. You are innocent in the eyes of the law and for the purposes of ascribing punishment until proven guilty. But that until proven guilty does not change the status of your having committed the crime or not. Now, in the case of illegal border crossing, understand what we're talking about is a war crime. You are committing an act of war against a sovereign nation as a rogue element of a hostile foreign entity. That has never been more clear than with illegal aliens and their sympathizers waving the flags of foreign nations on American soil as they conduct their invasion. So Donald Trump is getting a lot of criticism right now because over the weekend, in response to these riots, now this is that video I just showed you. Let me go back to the Twitter page so you see. This is Democratic Wins Media sharing this, and this scene does in fact, apart from all of those. And you can see, look at all the Mexican flags being flown, right? That looks like what you would do if you were an invading force attempting to take land in a foreign country. So the fact is, however, there has been massive violence in relation to these activities. They're rioting, they're doing acts of crime. Okay, yep. I'm gonna show this, Devin. Right, this is what's going on. They're setting things on fire. They're burning vehicles. They're throwing fire bombs at people, at law enforcement. Right. Aaron Olson asks, what is the crossing point where the feds open live fire rounds? Hopefully I hate to say this, hopefully it's when the enemy starts opening fire first. I would prefer that.
Giving everybody a fair warning
but let me give you this one from Terrence K. Williams.
Right now, if you have
the fried chicken man, I love this guy. But like I said earlier, a minute ago, I showed you that video, and it looks like just a shitload of people basically waving flags and signs. But pay attention to this.
I don't even know where to begin. Before I get started, I'm giving everybody a fair warning right now. If you have sensitive ears, watch another video, because I am not about to watch my language. I am not about to hold back at all. I'm going to say what is exactly on my mind, okay? If you are
and if he says something that gets us thrown off of YouTube, that's fine. We're still live on Rumble. And if you're still watching on YouTube, Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, X, hop over to Rumble. In fact, y'all get over to Rumble and y'all get those numbers high enough, I'll start giving away free memberships. Let's see what TK has to say.
Are waving a foreign flag in this country, if you are waving a foreign flag in America while burning down the city, rioting, causing chaos, screaming at federal agents, screaming at law enforcement, get the fuck out of this country and go back to the country that you love so damn dearly. Get the fuck out of here. Bye. Go back to the country that you love so much. Because if you hate America, because evidently you hate this country, to be sitting here, to be running around waving a foreign flag while burning down police cars, while looting, rioting, screaming your love for another country while in America, go back home. Take your asses.
Yeah, see, he mentioned screaming your love for another country. You know what? You're here legally. You came over the right way, and you're still proud of where you came from, right? You're an Italian immigrant. You moved to America for better opportunity because the Italian economy isn't worth a shit. But you still love your Italian food, Italian wine. You want to open an Italian restaurant and wave the flag and say, "Hey, proud product of Italy, come, let me share the beauty of our culture with you." Cool. I like Italian food. I'm gonna come say hello. In fact, I might walk in the door and say, "Fama Marte, I'm starving to death." Right? Come feed me. Right? But Sergeant Major says waving the flags of other countries is a factor for live ammunition. It is, right? But you come here and be proud of where you came from. That's fine. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about being proud of where you came from. We're talking about seizing territory. War is won when boots on the ground hold land and use the force of arms to retain it. God, why do we have flags? Right? What are flags for? Flags indicate property ownership. Okay? You fly the flag of your nation on a ship at sea. Right? Because the sea is international waters, nobody owns it. But somebody still owns the ship. That's why today, if you fly the skull and crossbones on your ship in international waters, that's a great way to get your ship sunk. Patrick, you're getting ahead of me. Slow down, son. So the whole point to a flag is to indicate this is who we are, and we are here, and we have declared that we own this territory. We have possession, we have command and control of this territory where we've just planted this flag. Okay? So, when I say that, understand that what I'm talking about is war condition. And you can go back to 2020 and look at the situation then. We've heard the words insurrection over and over again. Where did I have it? This one, right? We heard insurrection over and over again, right? What does an insurrection look like? Right? They said this is an insurrection up top, and this is a peaceful protest down here at the bottom. Homeboy is standing on a police car amid a burning riot. Okay? Fire everywhere. He is standing on top of a cop car that has been smashed, broken. Look, that door's been ripped open so that they've broken the hinges backward. They've graffitied the police car. He's standing on top of it waving a foreign flag. This is the conduct of an invading force. We've been told for years that that's hyperbolic language, that it's unreasonable to call it an invasion. We've had over 10 million. Some estimates put it as high as 25 million illegal immigrants cross the border into this country in the last 4 years. Now, to his credit, credit where it's due, the Donald came in and shut down more than 90% of border crossings immediately. Which, of course, also put the lie to the whole narrative from the last 2 years of Joe Biden saying, I want to do something about the border, but I don't have the authority. I'm waiting on the Congress to act. Bullshit. That the President of the United States of America is the only political agent who was elected by the entire population. He is the civilian authority, commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces, with not just the authority, but the corresponding obligation, duty, and responsibility to secure our national security and national sovereignty. Is it? TPS report says, I think that's a Waymo self-driving car he's standing on. Oh, you know what? I'll give you a maybe because I don't know that. I was assuming it's a cop car because of the blue light on top of it. I could be wrong. I see that big disc there might be the antenna structure, so maybe, but that does very little That does very little to change my opinion of the fact that he's standing on a car. Basically, he's decided to commandeer someone else's private property in a public street and wave a flag. I mean, this is an attack. Now, of course, old Donald is getting a bunch of criticism, and here's where we get to Patrick getting ahead of me on this. Jesus, I'm going to have to hire a producer because it is hell on wheels trying to switch tabs and get the videos queued up as I'm talking.
Get your hands off these poor people. They're just trying to live their lives, man. Trying to live their lives, paying their taxes. Been here 10 years. The fear, the horror. The hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough.
Yes, please come after him and arrest him. Tom Holman, you know what? That's exactly it. Go get him. Go get the son of a bitch, because here's what's happening in Los Angeles right now, in California right now. Let me be very, very clear about this. And this goes for Barack and Baraka and what's her face, McIver. That's hilarious. The two black Democrats, the mayor and the congresswoman that went to the ICE facility in New Jersey and physically assaulted police officers. By the way, neither of them are sitting in jail right now. That by itself is an affront, right? But you know what, Gavin? Here you go. Let's talk about that for a minute. Aiding and abetting laws, charges, punishment, statute of limitations, federalcharges.com. Aiding and abetting or accessory charges can be brought against any person who assisted in the commission of a crime. There are significant differences in the application of this law between states. However, in almost all cases, someone who is guilty of aiding and abetting does not actually have to be present during the crime. Rather, they must have knowledge of the crime before or after it took place, and they may provide assistance in terms of financial support, actions, or advice. In severe cases, the charge may rise to conspiracy. So, in severe cases, the charges may rise to conspiracy. Let me show you what severe cases look like. California has 54 electoral votes. That means 54 congressional seats. Even not voting, migrants give Democrats 14 more electoral votes. That means roughly nearly a quarter of California's 54 electoral votes are the result of there being a sanctuary state intentionally harboring hostile foreign invaders and hiding them and protecting these criminals from law enforcement in this country. They are working day and night, not just to hide them from law enforcement, but to actually stand up and conduct acts of war against the U.S. government and against the people of the rest of the country by engaging in serious violence. Yes, Cameron, that's very pedantic. You're adorable. Post your R, shitburger. Anyway, the fact is, a quarter of their voting authority is directly derived from the fact that they're harboring hostile foreign invaders in their country, standing up and conducting violence against the United States of America in support of that. That sounds to me like a fucking conspiracy, Gavin. The entire Democrat Party is fighting tooth and nail, right? Go back to 2020, well, 2019, really, and we were arguing about whether or not the question of citizenship should be included in the census. Obviously, it should be included in the census. Why in the hell should the money that is stolen from me at gunpoint by my government be given to anybody who's not a U.S. citizen? Right? So let me explain you how this works. Apportionment. A man with a gun comes to me and asks me to surrender my Fourth Amendment right to be secure in my person, property, and papers, demanding that I report to him my financial acumen across the course of a calendar year or a fiscal year. And then from that number, determine an amount of my money that he gets to force me on pain of death to surrender against all reasoning in the Constitution until the passage of an amendment in 1913 that says, fuck you and fuck your personal private property and fuck every chance you ever had of upward mobility as a productive citizen. We've got shitbirds to feed. And he's going to come and take that money from me. And then a census is conducted to determine the allocation, the apportionment of those resources across this country. Even if I could get behind the idea of giving my money away to people who don't deserve it, I've got to feed the entire damn planet. The whole world. Because that's what you're telling me when the census does not include the question of citizenship. You're telling me that there is no metric, right? You've heard them for the past several months now complaining that the Donald Trump's big beautiful bill is going to kick people off of Medicare and Medicaid. Let's be clear, what they're talking about, these people losing their Medicare and Medicaid, is that the big beautiful bill includes work requirements for able-bodied people who are collecting Social Security, disability benefits, Medicare, Medicaid. If you're able-bodied, capable to work, then you're required to work to at least some extent. And by the way, it's TPS report, Alex, you could probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, but it's some ridiculously low number, like 28 hours a month, right? Not the 50, 60, 80 hours a week that most of us work, except for, old people like Sergeant Major, who's retired. But those of us who do work and work 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week, right? It's nothing even approaching that. No. That's the kind of work you do to get yourself in the position where they steal your money to give it to the people who don't work 20 hours a month. Right? So the whole argument there is that there is no bar to entry for every inadequate shit stain on the planet to come here and put his hand in my pocket. So the Donald took over the National Guard, California, and deployed 2,000 troops to go and quell these riots. Understand, these people are setting fire to cars and buildings. We've seen this before, and I want to really drive this point home. Back in 2020, there were calls on the right and the left as the country burned. Okay, as BLM rioters did upwards of $4 billion in damage, injured thousands and murdered hundreds across the country, set the country on fire, went to the Capitol, threw firebombs at the White House, and set fire to St. John's Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And there were calls on the left and the right for Donald Trump to federalize, subtle difference, the National Guards of the several states. And they'll tell you, the National Guard was deployed in 2020. Not by the president. He was very clear that that's not my place. Now, there were some states, Georgia was one of them, Florida was one of them, that sent in the National Guard to get the riots under control. But the riots were national. Everybody heard about Chaz Chop, right? The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or the Capitol Hill occupied protest. The autonomous zones. Y'all, there were hundreds of those. We had more than one in the state of Georgia, in and around Atlanta, Decatur, in that area. And we even talked about the what is it, Cop City, the Stop Cop City protesters in and around Atlanta a few years ago, which, by the way, those protesters are still protesting. But a few of the governors did deploy the National Guard in 2020, but the president did not. And what was the result? The country burned and an election was stolen. So seeing him deploy National Guard now, I like to think that what we're seeing is Mr. Trump, Mr. President, learned his lesson. That when they fuck around, you cannot skip the find out step. Right? That's the basic scientific process. Fuck around, find out, take notes. Right? Well, back in 2020, President Trump, trying to be magnanimous, he skipped the find out part. And so instead of FAFO, we got FAFA, FAFA, fa, 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 all the way up to the election. We were told that January 6th was an insurrection. How much property damage was done to that building? They claim it was a few $1 million of property damage because there were some windows broken and some art damaged. And I'm not going to fully relitigate the whole January 6th argument right now, but I would like to point out we've got ample video evidence now that it's been forced to be released. What happened that day is there were two protests. There was one behind the building and one in front of the building. The one in front of the building was the peaceful protesters. They had signs. They got a little excited, sure. But the one behind the building, where everybody was dressed in black and wearing black masks and actually fighting cops, was a very different creature. The only one you saw video of for the first 2 years was the one behind the building, where it's painfully clear that what you're looking at are Antifa and BLM agents provocateur showing up to create the riot. Pitt Danny mentions Ray Epps. Yeah, Ray Epps is that's a whole rabbit hole. But the Fedsurrection, it was one event, one day, lasted less than an hour. There were 0 police officers killed, 1 American veteran murdered, and Roseanne Boylan beaten to death by a police officer. Right? Several newspapers still have not taken down and corrected the headlines about 5 or 6 or whatever police officers being murdered by protesters on January 6th. There were no cops that died at the Capitol on January 6th. That didn't happen. But now we've got this going on over the weekend, and Donald Trump deploying the troops to go deal with it. Absolutely the correct answer. Now you're going to be told, well, they're protesting because Donald Trump deported American citizens. That's a lie. We've covered it before, but just to summarize it real quick, here's what happened. There was a woman and her family. The woman and the husband, they were hostile foreign invaders. They were illegal aliens. They were criminals. And they happened to have a kid. And it's super convenient for the narrative that the baby is like 2 years old and has cancer. Well, they broke another law. They got themselves deported. And they chose to take the baby with them. They didn't have to. They could have surrendered the baby to the system, to the orphanages, the child protective custody, et cetera, et cetera. They could have left the American citizen here, but they chose not to. And hey, if if I found myself in a situation where my actions were going to cause me to be separated from my children, then please believe I would employ every capability at my disposal to prevent myself from being separated from my children that way. Absolutely. If my options were leave your kid in the foreign country while you go home, or take your kid home with you, I'm taking my kid home with me, right? And you can extrapolate from that what you will about other situations, as I might. Anyway, and he got roundly criticized, and they told us he deported an American citizen, and it's a lie. It is an absolute stone-faced lie. And then it got better. Within practically hours of that story, there's another story, similar circumstances, criminal aliens, had a baby, right? And we're all expected to pretend like the baby, who is the child of hostile foreign invaders from a foreign sovereign state and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, not to the jurisdiction of the United States thereof. We're all supposed to pretend like this anchor baby is magically imbued with citizenship in the sovereign United States, which the Constitution very clearly states it is not. But these parents were deported, and they chose to leave their child, who was also 2 or 3 years old, in the U.S. And, of course, the immediate criticism was, Donald Trump is separating families. Pick one. Either we deport the whole family together, or the family gets separated. And by the way, it was their choice. The criminals were given the opportunity to make the choice themselves. And it is a binary choice. You either take the baby with you or you don't. They're trying to insinuate to you that there's a third option, which is everybody stays in America, everybody stays here, and we just pretend like the parents are not criminals. That's not an option. It can't be. Just sheer mathematics. We can't do that. Now, in the clip that you saw of Gavin Newsom, where he said they're just trying to live their lives and pay their taxes. Bullshit. We keep being told over and over again that these illegal aliens pay their taxes. Okay. Let's assume for a moment that some of them pay taxes. Okay, they pay sales taxes when they buy products in stores. Okay. But let's assume for a moment that some of them pay income tax. Do all of them pay income taxes? Now, I'm not a fan of taxes. But here's the thing. If I have to pay and you get benefits without paying, then that doesn't work for me. That just does not work for me. No. Oh, then it goes even further. I want to get, okay, let's see. I covered Newsom. I covered aiding and abetting. Okay, this one. There we go. A little more virtue signaling. So listen closely. This is Maxine Waters. Y'all remember Maxine Waters, right? If you see a Trump supporter in a gas station or a restaurant or petrol station, you get up, you go, you get on them, you get in their face, you tell them they're not welcome. Same bitch.
No, I want you to. Hello. Congresswoman Waters. I just came to use my congressional authority to check on baby.
Ma'am, our lobby is securely now to all visitors.
Excuse me, I need to get in.
Contact our public affairs office.
I need to get in.
I need to get in. I need to get in. Let's see what the comments say. She's no DI hire. Thought she was going to get some. Okay. That's good. Oh. Okay. Grok says on June 8th, 2025, Rep. Maxine Waters tried to enter the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles to check on detained SEIU leader David Huerta, arrested during ICE raids. She was denied entry due to security protocols, with officers stating the lobby was secure to all visitors. The door was closed, though some claim it was slammed in her face. Now, we just watched that video. Okay. People are saying the door was slammed in her face.
To use my congressional authority to check on baby.
Ma'am, our lobby is
Slammed in her
securely now
face?
to all visitors.
Excuse me, I need to get in.
Contact our public affairs office.
I need to get in.
That was not slammed in her face. She tried to fight a cop. She tried to employ physical force against a cop. And let's make sure that we're very, very clear on what's going on here. Congressional member delegation and congressional staff delegation information. U.S. Customs Border Protection, CBP facilities visits and engagements protocol for members of Congress and staff. Okay, so this right here says basically there's rules and everybody has to follow the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, we'll throw you out. Access. This is the one that matters here, right? Access requirements, request process. It even gives you a helpful Congressional Affairs, Office of Congressional Affairs for the CBP at dhs.gov. When planning to visit a CBP facility, CBP asks for requests to be submitted at least 72 hours in advance of the visit. However, CBP will do its best to accommodate visit requests for members of Congress and congressional staff submitted less than 72 hours in advance of the visit, but CBP requires a minimum of 24 hours notice for visits by congressional staff. Now, let me throw something out there for you guys. There is an argument that may sound very reasonable that for the purposes of oversight, so that they can perform surprise inspections and make sure that nobody has a chance to get ready and hide shit, right? Sweep stuff under the rug, that the congressional oversight they should be able to just drop in anytime they want. Here's the thing. As reasonable as that may sound, what we're talking about are law enforcement activities, which I agree need maximum oversight. And I would go so far as to say there should never be a moment inside of one of these facilities, a moment or a location anywhere inside one of these facilities where anything is not on camera. I don't care if you've got a circle jerk in the shower with your illegal alien inmates. That needs to be on camera. There needs to never be an opportunity within that facility for clandestine operations to occur. Right? I don't want cops abusing criminals. And more importantly, I don't want criminals, most of whom are related to either Tren de Aragua, MS-13, Sinaloa cartel, etc., to have the opportunity to conspire with one another in secret. They should be observed at all times. And that oversight should be publicly available. I'd be totally comfortable with that. Right? Who watches The Watchmen? Fucking I do. You do. We do. Right? Every one of our dumbasses got in line and bought a Big Brother. We're all under constant surveillance. And sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Sons of bitches need to be on camera. There should never be a moment while he's in uniform that a police officer does not feel like he's being watched. And that is double true for the criminals that we retain in these facilities. But let me tell you this. You're talking about a facility that houses dangerous, violent criminals. And from time to time, believe it or not, those criminals have to be moved from one cell to another and are not perfectly secured. So if Maxine wants to sit down and watch the video feed, I say let her. But, yo, I'm here to just drop in whenever I want to. You understand? We covered recently Baraka and McIver attacking ICE officers at an ICE facility. There's some important context going on there when they were refused entry. You know, we can talk about how they didn't give the adequate notice as is required, right? But more importantly, they specifically showed up with a large crowd of protesters in the middle of a prisoner transportation and exchange, right? They were bringing hostile foreign invaders out of the facility and loading them onto one bus to go to the next step in their process toward deportation. And they had a bus come in. They were taking bad guys off to lock them up and process them, and bringing other bad guys out to put them on the bus and send them off to be deported. Right, so there was prisoner transportation and exchange happening when Baraka and McIver showed up and hit cops, closed fist punching motherfuckers in the teeth. And these two are not in jail yet. Maxine Waters just attempted to do the same thing. Legally, technically. She attempted to force entry into a secure facility in the midst of official activity, which presents a specific and explicit threat of danger, a risk of violence to anyone involved in the activity because you are engaged in security activities with hostile, violent criminals. She knew damn well she wasn't going to get in there. She did not. I repeat, she did not in any way go to that facility with the intent of visiting with Herrera or whatever his name is. She went there knowing that because the law says she cannot enter without the notice, that she would be prevented from entering and be able to basically platform that and fundraise and make noise off of it. People like Maxine Waters are so stupid that they think that everybody's stupider than they are. People like Maxine Waters, she believes that she's actually quite clever, quite smart, and that everybody else is dumber than she is. She doesn't understand, because she's not very smart, that the rest of us can see her. We can see how smart she is. And I mean, she's dumb as a box of rocks. She's out there grandstanding to make a political message spread on social media in order to fundraise so that she can fund election campaigns. And she'll tell you, just like most Democrats will, they'll tell you that they give lots and lots of money to charities. What they do is they give lots and lots of money to former USAID customers, NGOs, who are actively importing illegal aliens so that they can bloat sanctuary states with census-counted non-voters. The result being they get second-class citizens to do slave labor who are counted for the purpose of apportionment, but then denied representation because they can't vote. right? They're not importing these people so that they can vote for them. They're importing these people so that they can increase the number of votes that the party gets at the federal level. And so that they can increase the amount of U.S. taxpayer dollars that are apportioned to their individual states. This is a terrible aside, but it's somewhat germane. One of the points of contention in the big beautiful bill is the argument about SALT, right? State and local tax exemptions, right? So what happens with these state and local tax exemptions is states like I think Florida doesn't have a state income tax. If you're in a red state without a state income tax, you're getting absolutely fucking robbed, right? State of Georgia, we have a state income tax, but it's pretty low. So a state and local tax deduction for us, against our federal income taxes, is basically non-existent. California, New York, right? These liberal states, they have extremely high state and local taxes. And then they get to deduct their state and local taxes from their federal income taxes. When you hear Californians talk about, oh, well, California would have the fifth largest economy in the world if it was a sovereign country, if it was its own country. Okay, cool. Secede. The fifth largest economy in the world? Great. Fuck off. Go be the fifth largest country in the world, the fifth largest economy in the world for a country. Go be the country with the fifth largest economy in the world. And then let's see how that works out for you when suddenly your every socialist whim is not being subsidized by the labor of red states. Hollywood may move a lot of money through it, and it may make a lot of income tax contributions to the state of California. But I guarantee you, it's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what we in the red states are subsidizing to the state of California. I know that's terrible. That's a big aside, but it's germane because, like I was saying, they've got 14 extra votes because of the number of illegals in their state. Well, that also affects that apportionment based on the census, which does not ask the question about citizenship. That also determines how much federal money goes into your state. Right? So on a smaller level, this is equivalent to the difference between somebody who has a 9-to-5 work a day, makes $150,000 a year, and then pays income tax, and all fairness, should be ineligible for all the welfare programs, right? Right? Get up, you go to work, you make $150,000, $150,000 a year. You pay your income tax, it's coming out to about half, a little less than half, right? So, and then you don't get any benefit from that tax money outside of the very basic. Oh, there's roads, and there's a military. By the way, those are the two benefits that you get from taxes. There's roads and there's a military. Tell me I'm wrong. Make the argument. Tell me, oh no, taxes pay for X, Y, and Z other things, and I'll eat one of my crocs if you point out something that's worth paying for. If you point out a thing other than an existent military and roads, which, by the way, private industry does better and cheaper. Okay, so you got your little $150,000 a year job, comfortable, pay taxes. You get practically nothing for the tax money that you pay. Cameron says if you make $150,000 a year, you work more than 9 to 5. Nope. That's but that's a whole other conversation, brother. And a lot of jobs paying way over $150 that are barely 9 to 5. Okay, now on the other side of that conversation, you're a drug dealer. Bring in $5 million a year. You pay zero in taxes. Because, we all know the crime doesn't pay. Doesn't pay the taxes anyway. You get all the same benefits I get from the tax money that you don't spend. And you get to collect all the welfare. That's right. Your dope boy gets his heating and air, his Section 8 housing, his EBT card, and he gets to pocket every penny that he earns. And a large part of that industry is wrapped up in illegal aliens. Now, I'm not saying every illegal is a drug dealer. In fact, the vast majority of them are not. But the vast majority of them are at least tangentially related. There's human trafficking. There's the use of illegals as mules to sneak drugs into the country, sneak drugs and money, or sneak money back out of the country. That's a big part of that business. And make no mistake, the invasion of the United States of America by hostile foreign invaders is a fucking business. It is a huge business. And this is what I'll leave you with, and I want you to pay attention to this. It is the business that the Democrat Party is engaged in. The Democrat Party has been the party of slavery for the entire history of the United States of America. They traffic in flesh, they traffic in drugs, they traffic in violence. It is the business of the Democrat Party. It's the reason that slavery, having been abolished globally, made a massive global resurgence under Barack Obama, with African open slave trade markets coming back into the world. Open air slave markets reopened under Barack Obama. Human trafficking, sex slave trafficking skyrocketed under Joe Biden, and it was already a multi-billion-dollar business. It's not because the Democrats are bad at stopping crime. It's because they are explicitly complicit. It is their stock and trade. It is the business that they are in. And what's even more horrifying is the drug trade, the human trafficking, the sex trade, all that stuff that the Democrats are involved in. Those are actually collateral interests, incidental. That's collateral damage to the real business of one world domination. When you think Democrat, think globalist. The objective is to eliminate all sovereign borders and establish a state, a global state, that is socialist in nature, with a three-tiered system. You'll have the ruling class, you'll have the slave class, right? And then in the middle, you'll have a sort of pseudo-paramilitary law enforcement wing. It won't be the same as the army. It won't be the same as the police, but it will be a sort of faith militant for the ruling class. Like Pitt Danny says, we're 10% live as kings, and the rest of you live in the pods and eat the bugs. You'll climb out of your, you'll wake up in the morning, you'll open the lid on your coffin in the warehouse that you live in. You'll unplug the bug hose that pumps, insect protein directly into your stomach while you sleep. You'll go and you'll work your fucking day. And then you'll come back and you'll go work 12 hours, and then you'll come back, you'll plug your feeding tube back in, and you'll put on your virtual reality helmet and close the lid on your coffin and have sweet, sweet dreams of vulgar debauchery for 12 hours that will be called sleep. And then you'll wake up in the morning and you'll pull out your catheter and you'll pull out your feeding tube and you'll pull out your shit hose and climb out of your coffin and go back to work. That's the objective. And the reason the Democrats are involved in the slave trade, the sex slave trade, the human trafficking marketing, the drug trade, the reason they're in bed with pharma, let Soma for the masses. Oh, are you having a hard day? Have a half a gram. It's a 15-minute vacation. Have a half a gram. Go watch the children play sex games in the park, and then come back to work when you feel better. Right? If you haven't read Aldous Huxley, he paints a far scarier future than Orwell did. Go pick up a copy of Brave New World. It's terrifying. Right? And he hit the nail a little harder than Orwell did. But that's the objective. The reason they're involved in the slave trade, sex trade, all that stuff, is because to people like Gavin Newsom, Maxine Waters, etc., you are not human beings. You're livestock. And to call you livestock in this context is incredibly generous, by the way. Right? I pick my chickens up and pet them. I tell them I love them. I come outside and I say, hey, ladies. And they come over and peck at my toes when I'm working on the griddle. We're buds. We take care of each other. That's not how the Democrat thinks of you. Right? I never had a Democrat walk up and scratch my beard. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it for there. Again, my apologies for missing out on the Saturday deep dive because no power. Shit happens. But we do have that special on tap, and we'll be revisiting that. We'll be going back to the special from this past Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, and I'll have to sneak in an extra one somewhere because I'm going to have to make up that 2 or 3 hours that we lost this Saturday. So y'all keep an eye out. I'll get a little something done up for one evening this month, and we'll see how that works out. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.